Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the live broadcast of the Good Leadership Breakfast. You are in the right spot. I'm Bo Norby, and I'm going to be your breakfast barista this morning, and we'll talk more about that later. But right now, I want to help you get ready to set up for the best viewing experience that you can have. So we're suggesting that you have two devices. One, to watch the stream on either your computer or a tablet, and another device, preferably your phone, to use for our polling technology that we're going to be using to engage with you throughout the program. And you can visit, that first question is actually available right now. And you can go to goodleadership.com/GLB poll and start answering that first question for us, and we can start collecting some data. As well, and again, if you don't have two devices, no worries, just use your phone and flip back and forth as needed. We also have 3 tools for you to use to enhance your leadership development experience during the program. And you can view those and download those at goodleadership.com/GLB tools. And lastly, we would love to hear from you, so please engage with us using social media, and any posts that you put up there regarding this experience, please add the hashtag GoodnessPays. All right? We'll start the programming around 7:30. I'll pop back in 1 or 2 more times to greet new arrivals, and we will see you in a little bit. Enjoy that cup of coffee. Hey everybody, good morning. Bo here again, welcoming you to the live broadcast of the Good Leadership Breakfast. And I just want to welcome our new arrivals and get you up to speed. Again, we recommend that you use 2 devices. One for watching the stream, that can either be a laptop or a tablet, and a second device, preferably your phone, to engage with us on our polling technology that we'll be using throughout the program. In fact, our first question is available for you to answer right now. And you can do that by going to goodleadership.com/GLB poll. And as well, we have 3 tools that you can download to enhance your experience, your leadership development experience during the program. And you can get those by going to goodleadership.com/GLB tools. So just pop those open and have them available. Lastly, we want you to engage with us on social media. So any posts you put up there regarding this experience, please include the hashtag GoodnessPays. All right, we're about to start around 7:30 or so. I'll pop in one more time for everyone else who's joining and get them up to speed. We'll see you in a little bit. Good morning again, everybody, and welcome to the live broadcast of the Good Leadership Breakfast. We're about to start, but one last time, if you're just joining us, we highly recommend that you have two devices. One to watch the stream on, like a laptop or your tablet, and a second device, preferably your phone, to engage with us on our Poll Anywhere technology. As mentioned, we have that first question available for you to engage with and answer, and you can do that at goodleadership.com/GLB poll. And make sure you take an opportunity to open up the tools we have available to enhance your leadership experience during this program. And you can get those at goodleadership.com/GLB tools. Okay, so without any further ado, you're all here for the Good Leadership Breakfast. So I want to introduce your host, the CEO of Good Leadership Enterprises and the founder of the Good Leadership Breakfast, Paul Botts.
Thank you, Bo. Well, welcome to the world premiere of the Good Leadership Breakfast, broadcast virtually live over Facebook. We're so happy that you're here. Thanks for joining us. We hope you have a cup of coffee and that you're ready to settle in for a world-class development experience. Now, I have to admit that normally my co-host is much more charming and handsome than I am. Julie McDonough from Bremer Bank is at home, like many of you are, caring for children during the coronavirus scare. So you know what? We're wishing her well. This is what she normally looks like when she's greeting people in the ballroom at Golden Valley Country Club, and then she will introduce me, and this is normally what I look like at Golden Valley Country Club. Typically, the Good Leadership Breakfast has about 250 guests, and today we are broadcasting from the Aspiration Suite of our offices in Edina, Minnesota. And rest assured, we have less than 10 people here. And we're going to do our best to try to stay more than 6 feet apart, except for when we do our interview. We'll be next to each other, and then if that makes you nervous, I'm sorry about that. We are really curious as to where you are today. So will you please use the interactive functions of Facebook Live and comment. Tell us, what city are you watching from? And I'll introduce Bo here in a few minutes. And Bo will come back and tell us where people are watching our breakfast from. Now, to give you some context, if you're new to us, we've been doing the Good Leadership Breakfast for 10 years. We produce a series of 4 breakfasts in the spring and 4 in the fall, and we started the 11th season last month in February, and that featured a really special speaker. His name is Charles Antis. He's the founder of Antis Roofing in Irvine, California. And Charles is a special guy. One of the reasons is his story is the first story that we told in the How Goodness Pays book that really revealed all the research we've done around goodness in leadership. And Charles's message was about understanding your personal mission and making sure that you're positive and treating all of your employees as human beings. And that's particularly important because in the Great Recession of 2009, when all of Charles's competitors were laying off all their employees, he decided to keep his employees intact, and they donated free roofs for all of the Habitat for Humanity houses in Orange County, California. And today, he's one of the most successful, independently owned roofing contractors in America. We also used our Poll Everywhere technology, like Bo has encouraged you to do, and we found out two really interesting pieces of information. And that is that 26% of the employees that we surveyed do not have a supervisor that leads with an encouraging style that creates positivity in the workplace. And if you put that in the context of everything we've been learning about epidemics and pandemics, 26% would definitely be a pandemic of negativity. That's one of the reasons why we exist here at the Good Leadership Breakfast. And finally, we also learned that the brand moniker that most leaders crave is the brand moniker of being authentic, which of course works fine unless you're authentically negative. So here we go. We're going to move on. Last month, we also raised almost $5,500 for the Second Harvest Heartland. It was a fantastic experience. We're going to duplicate that experience today. We raise money virtually with the Bucket of Goodwill, and you can dial on right now if you want to at goodleadership.com/BOGW. That stands for Bucket of Goodwill. And what's beautiful about this is that our friend Mark Bergman, who invented that, he is going to match whatever we raise today. So the focus today, this is a leadership development workshop, and our focus is on resilience in tough times and the impact that planning has on positivity in teams. What's fascinating about this is that we chose our speaker and this topic 3.5 months ago, long before we knew we were going to be homebound by the coronavirus. So this is a development workshop. If you have not gone out to get your learning materials, please do so. It's important because we have 3 things that we're going to use today. One is the table handout that typically we use at the breakfast. It's got a spot for notes on it. It talks about all the information that you need, including the QR codes to be able to access the Bucket of Goodwill. We have 2 tools we're going to use. We're going to go extensively into the Good Leadership Benchmark. There are 15 powerful questions to help you improve your resiliency. And we're going to talk about the virtues of having a personal and professional 3-year plan. So these are tools that you're going to want to have for that part of the discussion. But of course, we can't do any of this without having sponsors. And I'm so grateful to our friends at Twin Cities Orthopedics. In the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, this is the dominant player in orthopedics. They have their name on the side of the Minnesota Vikings practice facility. And we're so grateful that Twin Cities Orthopedics helps us bring this. Next, we have our friends from our media partner is Twin Cities Business. They're the people who produce by far and away the best business news in town with in-depth reporting. It's the best publication within 250 miles. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our workshop sponsor today. That, of course, is Darren Lynch. And Darren was a speaker at the Good Leadership Breakfast about a year and a half ago. He's a wonderful friend of our firm. Darren, please tell us a little bit about Irish Titan and why you sponsor.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm Darren Lynch, the founder and CEO of Irish Titan. We're an e-commerce agency, so we help merchants sell products online. We strategize, market, and build those websites and those digital properties. More importantly, we do that with this business first, online second mentality. That's our why, to use Simon Sinek, who I'm a big fan of. We have it trademarked and framed and hang up by our door. That's enough about us, though. As far as good leadership, we have been fans of Paul and his team since the very beginning. We actually, don't know how much I should share, we used to share this office space. So we started our firms around the same time. We've grown our firms. Speaking for myself, I've learned a lot from Paul over the years. I think the reason that we are big fans of what they do, there are 2 reasons. One, there's a lot of trust, which is based on character, competency, and common sense of purpose. There's trust between my team, their team, what we're both trying to accomplish, and the ways we're trying to accomplish that. And then secondly, a halo effect. Being associated with Paul, the team, the breakfast, that's a group, that's a community that we like being a part of. So we have been proud to have been part of that since the very beginning, since the very first breakfast. And I'll end with a big thank you to Paul for adjusting quickly in unusual times and changing from a breakfast that we all look forward to 4 times in the fall, 4 times in the spring, to this online format. So thanks for helping us get back to business as usual in unusual times.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Paul.
you very much, Darren. We really appreciate it. Now I introduce you to another really good friend of the firm, Colleen Dockendorf from Ryan Companies. And so, Colleen, will you tell us a little bit about Ryan and why you sponsor?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I would like to start, however, with a classic Irish toast, which is sláinte, which means good health. Obviously critical in these days. This is one of, like Darren's company, Irish Titan, this is one of the most important weeks for Ryan Companies typically because we celebrate our Irish heritage. We were unable to do that this week, however, we did share a virtual toast with all of our employees and customers this past Tuesday. So Ryan Companies is a commercial real estate firm which we develop, design, manage, finance, and certainly construct places where people can thrive. We've been associated with Good Leadership Enterprises for 5-6 years now, and we do that because our missions are so clearly aligned. At Ryan, we create places where people can thrive, and we do that in a way where we are always striving to do the right thing. And that so clearly aligns with Good Leadership Enterprises in the fact that we spread goodness. We believe that leadership is our differentiator as an employer, as a provider of real estate services. So in this rapidly changing environment that we currently find ourselves in, and certainly challenging, putting people first and putting in good practices where our leadership is resilient, which John will be talking about, but also thinking about what's the effect on our communities, on our employees, on our clients. Thinking bigger like that is especially critical in these times. So we thank you, Paul, for our continued partnership.
Absolutely. Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Darren, too. I just got to give it up for these two. I mean, it's not easy to stand here in a makeshift studio and stare into an iPhone to produce a breakfast. So great job, great job. Here we go. We are so happy to have our partners from Interaction Dynamics, who are out in Pennsylvania. It's a firm like ours. It's the Mid-Atlantic affiliate of Good Leadership, and they have many of their clients and partners and employees. A shout out to you guys. Thank you very much for everything you guys do for us. Now it's time for me to introduce you to the Goodness Barista. You met Bo a few minutes ago. Bo helps us whip up a buzz about goodness on the internet. So hey, Bo, tell us what's going on. What's the buzz out there?
Yeah. First of all, this is super cool. Everybody's loving this. We've got people tuning in from all over, from Pennsylvania, Allenhurst, New Jersey, Lakeville, Minnesota, Hudson and Richmond, Wisconsin, and Edina, Minnesota. So a little bit of a coast-to-coast thing. We're waiting. It's a little early for those in California, but that's all right. Can watch it later. People are also so grateful that we're doing this. As Darren mentioned, that we have adjusted to say, hey, let's not cancel it. Let's figure out a way to make this happen. And as well, they love the fact that we're taking those ticket donations and sending those towards the workers at the place we normally have the breakfast. So, and I want to note, you mentioned as well that there was a lot of talk and a lot of movement regarding what Charles Antis shared about his stories of generosity through his roofing company. Mm-hmm. Everything from starting with that single mom who had the damp and moldy house to fixing her roof, now to doing it for the homes in the Ronald McDonald House.
Yes.
So there was a lot of chat about that, and it's just another great example of how goodness pays.
Yeah, thank you very much. We also started with a survey this morning to try to ask, who is in the room.
Yes.
So it's a virtual room today, but let's take a look at the data and what we found out.
All right.
Okay.
26% sole proprietor. We've got the VPC level executive at 22%, manager at 22%, and employee not manager at 30%.
Yeah, so roughly 40% are people with team responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
and that's good. That's good context. And we expected to have a few more sole proprietors and employees not managers in the room because obviously we're broadcasting into people's kitchens today. So that's all fun. Thank you.
Yes, so we're going to be doing 4 more polls today. So keep that handy on your phones. And again, if you need the link, we've got it there. It's goodleadership.com/GLB poll. And that will get you to the questions, and it should advance as we move through the program to the next question that you can answer.
Thank you, Bo. Yeah.
See ya.
So far, so good. We're going to work on our polling here in a minute. We understand there's a little bit of a lag, so I'll do my very best to help manage this situation. So let's start our conversation today with the wisdom of Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers has become more popular lately because of the recent movie that starred Tom Hanks. And if you're looking for something to brighten your day and to help you develop as a leader, I highly recommend this book called The Good Neighbor. It's a simple read, and the wisdom that's involved in what Mr. Rogers said is really, really powerful. Here's my favorite quote. Try your best to make goodness attractive. That's one of the toughest assignments you will ever be given. How important is this phrase right now in what we're doing in society? And it's really important to us here at Good Leadership and the Good Leadership Breakfast, because our mission is to spread goodness through good leaders, because we've proven goodness pays. So it begs the question, what is goodness? Well, we've done extensive research over the last 10 years, and probably the most important thing we did when we published the How Goodness Pays book is to land on one ubiquitous definition. So goodness in business and leadership is defined as when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. In other words, all of the coaching work that we do through our firm and all the materials that we bring to you through the Good Leadership Breakfast are designed to help increase the ideas around thrive together, cultures of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. So what is good leadership, you're asking? Good leadership is when good leaders work together with the art and science of working together to create great results. And everything we do here is for you to produce better results faster in your jobs. So it's likely that you're already getting sick of this concept of doing more with less. Is that fair? As we look out into the next 8 to 10 to 12 weeks of working from home and determining what kind of financial impact this is going to have on all of our lives, this do more with less is really actually no longer a cliche. But what's important about this phrase is your reaction to the idea of doing more with less. How we react to our world is what we call character. Character is how we carry ourselves in good times and in bad, and frankly, what we do when no one's looking. An important part of good leadership is that we have strong character, and we help develop character at the Good Leadership Breakfast with a lot of different techniques. One of them is the 7 F's, which is over here on this banner. The idea that we can run everything we do through our leadership through faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. We're going to talk a little bit more about 7 F's. But character is not enough. We also have to develop success habits. Success habits that help us be our very best every day as a leader to create the kind of positive impact that we're expecting from leaders on our customers, our employees, our community, and our shareholders. This is the formula for how we help develop leaders at Good Leadership Enterprises. But today's conversation is uniquely focused on resilience. Here's what resilience is defined as. It's the capacity to recover quickly in difficulties, and also the ability to stay positive in setbacks, and the ability to spring back into shape when things go wrong. So it's about elasticity. So as we start to think about how much our lives have changed even in the last 3 weeks, resilience is really, really important. And we're excited to introduce you to a speaker that can help us think about this, maybe a little differently than normally do. But this is the time where we have our very first workshop. So I really do hope that you downloaded the tools, because I'm going to walk you through the Good Leadership Benchmark. And when we get done with the Good Leadership Benchmark, I'm actually going to ask you to tell us what your benchmark score is. So let me show you what this is. You can see this right here in my hands. It's a document that's got 15 different questions on it. These questions, half of them are related to the 7 F's, which we talked about just a second ago. And the other half are related to strategies that people who have really well-rounded, thriving lives, both personally and professionally, use to actually stay at their best. So, this is how this is going to work. I'm going to read each one of the 15 statements, and I want you to actually just record your score on the tool. And once you do that, it'll require a little bit of math. You're going to have to add up your score to come up with a number. Each one of these statements has a role in helping you increase your resilience. So let's start with the very first one. To what extent are you living the life you imagine? 1 on this scale means it couldn't be any worse right now in your life, and it's not true at all. And 10 means you're fully satisfied. So to what extent are you living the life you imagine? Now, if you don't have the tool in front of you, just go ahead and write a number between 1 and 10 down on a piece of paper and add up the number. The second statement is about your faith life. How satisfied are you with your faith life? And I'm not asking you who you worship, do you worship, why or why not. I'm just asking you to assess how satisfied you are with your spiritual life. The next question has to do with our family. How satisfied are you with your loved ones who share a common sense of home? Finances is next. How satisfied are you with how your money funds your priorities? This is not about how much money you have in your pocket or your checkbook or your portfolio. It's about how satisfied are you with how your money funds your priorities. Fitness. How satisfied are you with the health of your body? I think we all have more time to be working out these days. So we're hoping that this gets better. Friends. How satisfied are you with the people who share your joys and disappointments? 1 through 10. I'm hoping that you're finding new ways to connect with your friends. Fun. How satisfied are you with the part of your life that's playful and joyful? We were just having a side conversation about all the games we're going to be playing in our homes these days. And future. How satisfied are you with the hope that you have for yourself and others? For those of you who are familiar with good leadership and some of our concepts, the 7 F's is core to much of what we do. Now, the second half of the benchmark has to do with strategies that people use to stay fit and healthy and whole in their lives. The first one is I live and work with a personal mission statement that motivates and inspires me. Give yourself a score, 1 through 10. Number 10, I have a plan with clear personal and professional goals for the next 3 years. This question is going to come back to us in a couple of minutes. 11, I use my calendar effectively to ensure time for the most important things in my life. 12, I regularly make time for meditation or reflection to stay in tune with my sense of direction. 13, I have a reliable group of people who support me and help me be accountable for my goals and aspirations. 14, I effectively blend together my life, my work life, and my home life. And finally, I am mentoring someone in ways that are satisfying for me. So thanks for hanging in there. I warned you this is a leadership development workshop. In order to get the benefit out of it, we have to play along. And now the assignment is to do the math. It's totally okay to pull out your iPhone and use it like a calculator. But what we need you to do now is to add up your score and then use your phone, their Poll Anywhere technology, and send us in your number. We know statistically it could be as high as 150. We've been doing this research for many, many years, and I have an average first-time score that I'll share with you in about 30 seconds. While you're calculating, I'm going to step out and get a little bit of a fresh cup of coffee. It's fun to watch the numbers come in on the word cloud here. It's exciting. Thank you very much for participating. I'll let it scroll for about 10 more seconds. Fantastic. We will continue to collect this data. So if we had Benny Weinbeck's band here, I could say, drum roll, please. Here's the average score for people who take the benchmark for the first time. Believe it or not, it's 99. We've had about 14,000 people use the benchmark score since we invented this. And what's delightful as an executive coach is to watch people invest themselves in the strategies on the benchmark and see their scores rise. Over a period of about 6 weeks, when people engage with a coach or a personal accountability group, we see people's scores rise between 20 and 30 points. And it's so fun to see the bounce in their step and the spark in their eye when they see the benchmark score rise. We really do believe the combination of the things that we asked you to answer on the 15 questions has a lot to do with your personal resiliency. We think that's really important right now. We've just given you a really valuable tool that you can share with your friends and family and work on your resiliency as we all battle the work from home blues. The coaching question is, what combination of scores on the benchmark can you combine together to help increase your resiliency? Yesterday, I was talking with a CEO client of ours in California, and he decided that he's going to combine 3 things. Number 1, he's got no excuse not to get out of bed in the morning and work on his fitness. Second, he's decided he's going to call one of his friends every single night because he's got enough time and he doesn't really like to watch TV. And also, he thinks it's a perfect time for him to start mentoring more people in his organization. So that combination of 3 is going to help him work on his resiliency. So we also learned through the How Goodness Pays research that there are 5 things that organizations do, leaders in organizations do, to ensure that goodness pays and increases the resiliency of their organization. And you can see the number 1 thing on this list is having a compelling plan. So I'm going to create a connection right now to the question that we asked earlier before our pre-meeting survey. We had an unprecedented number of people take the 1-question survey for the Good Leadership Breakfast, which is one of the reasons we knew that people are interested in tuning in on Facebook today. So here's the question that we asked. It's directly related to number 10 on this personal leadership benchmark. I have a plan with clear personal and professional goals for the next 3 years. Yes or no? Here's the data we collected. Only 42% of people say yes, they have a plan with personal and professional goals, which means 58%, roughly 2/3, don't have a plan for the next 3 years. And this is where it gets just a little personal as a leader. I think you should ask the question, if you don't have clear goals for the next 3 years, both personally and professionally, why would anybody follow you? Goal setting is a really important part of resiliency and of getting people to work together in a team. So we don't have time to dive into this today, but I'm giving you the personal and professional planning tool that we use with all of our CEO clients, all of our executive coaching clients. This is a powerful way to take a good look at your life and where you're headed, especially now you've got extra time to talk about this with your kids, with your spouse, with your friends when you get together. So we encourage you to follow the instructions here and answer the coaching questions on the bottom. We do have a poll right now that I'm going to ask you about. The poll says this. It's the 3rd poll question. What is harder for you in planning? Is it the personal side of the planning, or is it the professional side of the planning? So just make a judgment, personal or professional. I know some of you may be watching who are retired or students, so maybe you don't have the same idea around professional, but make a judgment, personal or professional. The poll is open. let's watch the data unfold. Give it about 10 more seconds. Well, it looks as if our mandate to work from home is also a mandate to be talking with our loved ones about our goals are personally at home. I know my wife and I have spent some time doing this recently. We are recently empty nesters, like for real, and it's pretty darn exciting. So we've got some, we need to do some work on setting some personal goals. This is where I'm going to encourage you to consider how fortunate you are. And it's time for us to do the bucket of goodwill before we introduce you to our speaker, John Thomas. Up to this point, we've raised $326,000, and we've given those away to local charities. We're going to do it a little bit differently this time. As you go on and make your donation, you can use the QR code on the materials that we provided. There's a QR code right here on this. You can also go to goodleadership.com/BOGW. Any money that we raise today over the internet and here in person, I'm going to start with $100 in the bucket today from the Botts family. My friend Mark Bergman, who invented the handy paint pail, which is what this is called in the local hardware store. Around here we call it the bucket of goodwill. When you go and make your donation, you can choose between three really, really important charities right now. The first one is Meals on Wheels. The second choice is the CDC Foundation. We all hear about the CDC 25 times a day these days. And then also the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. It's specifically related to COVID-19 Response Fund. Whichever one of those three gets the most votes, we will channel all of the dollars there. Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate your support. You can continue to donate all the way through the end of our program, and we'll get the dollar totals and the charity by which we are going to donate to. We'll tell you that before we're done today. This is where I remind you that we do professional development work, and based on the enthusiastic support that we've gotten for the Good Leadership Breakfast online, we're going to start doing Webinar Wednesdays for all of you who are locked in at home. We're going to talk about leading through change and loss, and our first one will be Wednesday, March 26th. That's 5 days from now at 9 a.m. Central Time. If you want specific information, send us an email at info@goodleadership. We'll also be communicating with you the same way we did about the Good Leadership Breakfast. We're going to do this for about 8 weeks in a row, or at least the time we estimate that we're going to be homebound. So it's a good way for you to grow with other leaders out of your homes. So the focus of today's program is for enterprise leaders, people who understand the importance of being resilient in tough times and the role of planning in positive teamwork. Our speaker today is my friend John Thomas. I tell you what, it's so wonderful to meet such special people on this journey. John and I were introduced by a mutual friend through some charity work. John has a fantastic story. He was a basketball star who played at every level, including in the NBA and for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He found himself in a very strange place when basketball was over, and he's going to tell us all about his journey and how he stayed focused and how he became the wonderful husband and father and professional that who he is today. Today's in charge of the Vice President of the Basketball Development at the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Lynx. Please join me in welcoming John Thomas.
Thank you, Paul.
Hey, you know what? We got to do this. And for obvious reasons, John's going to sit down in order to talk to you, okay?
Am I even in the frame?
Yeah. That's exactly right. We got a nice shot of your chest at the moment.
For sure.
So good. So thank you very much for joining
Of
us.
course.
And we're going to do everything we can to help keep you happy and focused as you talk into the iPhone.
For sure. Sounds
Okay.
good. Well, good morning, everyone. Really, the goal for me is to share about my personal journey I think how that journey for me has really helped to sort of cultivate the next version of my life, which has been sort of the professional aspect of what I do with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx. So I'll take you back to my childhood. Was born in Cape Coral, Florida. Really the happy-go-lucky kid that really just started to understand about life. So from Cape Coral, Florida, our family moved us to Finland. My dad played professional basketball as well, so was there for 2 years, and then family moved us to Turkey for 6. A lot of my formative years were overseas, so I really didn't have kind of the background that we have here in the United States. Had the puffy afro, the weird English accent because I went to British Embassy study group. So I often will pull out the English accent once in a while. So, from that time, really never had any interest in basketball. My father would go to the gym all the time, and I really never took a real interest. After that, being 8 years old, our family decided to move back to the United States. My father was finished playing basketball and moved to Minnesota. And we were in Duluth for about 4 months before we settled in South Minneapolis. And I quickly started to understand really just the American culture around sport. So I was the big chunky kid that had the X on his jersey and played football. Really excelled in being a defensive end and a tight end. And from there, really just started enjoying the sport. After it was all said and done, through my transition sort of through middle school to high school, I had grown 4 inches over the summer. A huge amount of stress on my body, and obviously just being a teenager was a lot of challenging times for me as I was growing up. So during that transition, as I went from inner city out to the suburbs, back to the inner city again, a lot of my peers had said that I should go out for basketball. I had dabbled back and forth in the sport. Really had tried baseball, obviously football, done a little bit of track, but I just dabbled more than anything. So basketball, as I started to take seriously, I found a love and a passion for it. During that time, my parents had split, and also my mom literally cut the cord on the television. My brother and I we figured out a way how to splice the cord on the television. My mom, once she figured that out, then she ended up taking the TV away completely. So talk about adversity. One, not having both my parents in the home, but also now not getting a chance to watch television. It wasn't like it is today where you got social media. So I found myself really just starting to find a passion for the sport, and I spent a lot of my time indoors, and I was around the time I was 15 years old, playing against men, and I found out, and they found out that I was the big kid that looked like an adult, but ultimately was still internally just a kid. So through that journey, I spent a lot of time indoors, and then when the lights would go off, I'd go outdoors, and really would start to push my game kind of to the next level. So I had this meteoric rise from high school, from my sophomore year to about my senior year. And by the time I was a senior, I really was receiving a lot of offers from a lot of major universities. I ended up choosing University of Minnesota, the Golden Gophers, Ski U Mah.
Mm-hmm.
So by that time, I was still that raw kid. And from about 93 to 97, I really honed my skills specifically on the court. But what I learned a lot about myself just in the classroom and all the efforts that I put forth, I really started to understand the essence of one, who I was, but also being able to interact with the community. And what I saw was really me building my brand locally within the community, just based upon sort of the narrative that it was building. By the time we reached my senior year in 1997, we went to the Final Four, ended up losing to Kentucky in the final game, and then from there, when it was all said and done, Coach Haskins pulled me aside and said, son, you're going to be a pro now. And I had no real idea around the fact that I was going to play professional basketball. It wasn't something that was really a goal or a focus for me. Again, I was still the happy-go-lucky kid that really spent a lot of time just wanting to, be the best teammate that I could, and really sort of cultivating the essence of true connection through just being that teammate. So I was drafted in the first round for the New York Knicks, and then was subsequently traded quickly to the Boston Celtics, and then again to the Toronto Raptors. So sort of a rocky journey to start for me, and to sort of summarize, within my 5 years in the NBA, I played on 7 teams. So a lot of adversity and a lot of different ways in which I saw team dynamics, leadership, how players took care of each other and how they didn't, and ultimately what were some of the levers that led to success. I had also an overseas career. I spent about 10 years overseas. I played in China, Spain, Syria, Ukraine, Israel, Greece, and South Korea, really with a lot of just cultural influence and an understanding, what it meant for me to be the player that was, excuse me, locally in market. And that's where I sort of look at, my ascension, sort of the ascension and the beginning of starting to fall was, towards the end of my professional playing career. That's when the resiliency had to kick in. So in 2012, I retired and was fortunate enough to get an opportunity to work for Lifetime Fitness. And the thing that really stuck out for me was how that transition was not going to be a smooth one. So I walked into Brian McCarty's office. He was the CEO of Lifetime, and ended up really trying to figure out how to negotiate when I had no negotiation skills, no conflict resolution skills. I had not practiced business at all because I was the basketball player. So really not having the acumen or the real understanding of how to build business. What I was good at was being a teammate. What I was good at was working hard, really looking at who our people were, but ultimately in not understanding sort of the fiscal implications of even bringing me aboard to an upstart company, which I became the national coordinator of Ultimate Hoops, which is the basketball division of Lifetime. I had zero clue on what that meant. So I went from in my career, kind of at my peak, making $66,000 net every month, to $577.46 every 2 weeks, and that was a big shock to me, because throughout the course of my time in amassing approximately $2 million, I had lost it all. And there's a lot of stigma around athletes and them losing money, so on and so forth. So a lot of what I do really helps to drive towards creating the real resources and tools for athletes today. So during that transition, what I've realized is athletes die twice. The challenge of me losing my identity, which everyone had told me that I was the great basketball player, full of dopamine, all the access and accolades that I had, really came to a crashing halt. And I was scared. And that for me where was really the challenge, was that I'm around people that don't look like me, talk like me, but ultimately didn't really truly understand exactly where I needed to build from. So when I think about resiliency and today and what's happened for me, that journey was really shaped and honed by at least one, fear propelling me to the next version of myself. I had to work. I no longer was in the spot where I could play anymore. So I had to really diversify my skill set in other areas. So when I would hear terms such as contribution margin or having to read a P&L, the things that I would do is I would take down notes in the meeting, and the very next day at 4:30 in the morning, I would take my badge and log into the office, and before everyone else was there, I was looking up all those terms, and by the time our next meeting would come about, I would have those definitions and terms. So when you think about the ways in which we sort of maintain resiliency, I think that first it's sort of understanding where you're at and how you can use that opportunity to sort of propel yourself out of fear. And in basketball, the thing that I would work on would be sort of my left hand. So my business world was my left hand to really get me better. So we all get good at what we practice. So for me, it was important, one, to start to do the research, and then two, I looked at all the resources that were out there. So I started to leverage digital mentors, everyone from Gary Vee to Simon Sinek to Tony Robbins, Seth Godin. I mean, there were so many people that were influential to me, and they were mentoring me, and they didn't even know it. And over time, I started to change my habits. Rather than listening to music on the way to work, I would listen to podcasts. I would listen to audiobooks. So I started to really deposit all the things that were necessary for my growth professionally outside of basketball. I started to move the needle that way. And then just getting the gumption to realize how to tap into real life mentors. So, getting introduced to Paul Botts, a gentleman by the name of Dan Mallon, Ethan Caston, our CEO, Ryan Tanke, our COO. There's so many people that have been influential in my life that ultimately started to become my real life coaches off the court. So for me, when you think about resiliency, it was one sort of coming out of shame and guilt that I had financially lost. Another part of it too was that I got divorced, so lost my house, lost my car, and the things that we sort of hold near and dear to our hearts that are the things we think are what drives success really ultimately had nothing to do with my purpose. Over time, I started to realize that my purpose was really rooted in love and getting people to live the best versions of yourself. And so when I was introduced to Good Leadership, it was a natural fit because you could see 1 through the 7 F's how you could start to measure out, where are you at in your life? And with that transition for me, going from basketball player, where I was at the pinnacle of my career, to starting over, to now as an executive on an NBA, WNBA franchise, I'm also looking at tools and ways that I can start, one, to continually, personally and professionally develop, but ultimately as that consummate teammate, how do I start to give that back? So, one, the resiliency factor was certainly there, but then as I transitioned, I thought about, what were the skill sets that got me to be the captain on our Final Four team? And what were the ways in which I really got a sense of being that leader in the NBA locker room? And they were no different as I started to move over to the business side. The various skill sets, it was just different language. And just understanding that on the basketball team, your goal is to create success. Well, it's the same in business, and it's the same in our personal lives. So as I started to really translate that language, I just started to understand what were the goals and the mission of our organization, and how do I play a part. So bringing it back to basketball, I was a post player. And so when you think about the members of your team, what is your skill set and what are you best at? And then ultimately, if as a post player, you can't shoot the ball, how do you go get shooters? So for me, the cultivating the essence of team was kind of at the forefront of what I was looking to accomplish. And as long as I understood that, one, our leaders care, which I'm very fortunate in that, being a part of the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx organization, our CEO on the business side and Gerson Rosas on the basketball side genuinely care about people. So knowing that they would want to meet me where I'm at and provide me with the tools, the resources, it's just about leveraging my gifts to then build my team. So I oversee our youth basketball infrastructure, so really getting out products and services for youth on the basketball court, but more importantly, how do we start to build the sense of togetherness and getting an understanding of building acumen and life skills off the court. I work with our current players to ultimately get them to a spot where they can realize that the tools that they have in front of them outside of just the game, they can build and interact with our other business units and community. And then lastly, just bringing an alumni base in. So, it's a small snapshot of who I am, sort of my journey. But I've taken a lot of opportunity to one, lean on other leaders across the board and in the industry to really cultivate that essence of team. So thank you for having me. Definitely looking forward to the interview and questions with Paul. We'd love to hear your interactions and comments, so on and so forth, and looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. Now, what we typically do at the Good Leadership Breakfast is we ask people to have a table discussion. So usually we're seated in groups of 6 or 8 around a table. What we're going to do today instead is, John, you're going to get to eavesdrop on a conversation. I'm going to invite Darren and Colleen to come in here and to talk just a little bit about what they thought. But before that, I want to make sure that you understand that we've got a poll question that's open now. You can send us any question that you want to hear John talk about after following this conversation. I know the poll is open. We'll use that to help not only inform the interview that I did with John, but then following this, we're going to record a podcast, and we'll have that available within a couple of days. So, John, why don't you let Colleen and Darren come in here. So, Colleen and Darren, both of you are organizational leaders. You have teams. So, it's fascinating to hear John in such a personal setting. Please tell us, what did you learn about resilience or teamwork from John Thomas?
Ladies first.
Thank you. Well, what I took some notes, and what I jotted down particularly is resilience is really the ability to, there are many things in our lives that we can control, and there are things that we can't. And resiliency is not necessarily what those things are, but how you react to them. So the things that are out of your control, whether it's health, whether it's do I have a job, whether it's, what are my kids doing, or what are my parents doing, the way you react to that is more important than the issue itself. So that's what came to mind in John's talk.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't take a lot of notes. I'm not a big note taker, but I did write down some words, which that's kind of how I take my notes. And I think that there were a lot of things in John's talk that resonated with me. Resiliency is something that I think all of us as entrepreneurs, leaders, I think have to demonstrate, because life's full of curveballs. That's kind of, sometimes that's fun, right? Not necessarily right now, but there's a lot of that. I think that part of what I also heard John talk about is diversification, actually, right? Like, he talked about the things that he needed to learn towards the end of his basketball career, at the beginning of his career after basketball, and I think that that's good for us, right? The broader our perspectives and points of view, the better. It's like, I don't have just one pair of green shoes, I have multiple pairs of green shoes in different styles. That's diversification, right? Everything green's right off at Irish Titan.
Yeah. And it's also recognizing what we're good at. So John talked about, what are the innate skills that you have, whether it's on the basketball court or in the military, or what you learned in school or in your community, relying on your innate skills that are transferable to whatever the situation is. I think that's something that also speaks to diversity of people's individual skill sets. And as leaders, we have to recognize those different skill sets in our teams.
Right. Something else that John spoke about that I thought was really interesting is the things that he had to do to become a good player, and how he contributed to a team, and those sorts of things. Whenever I interview potential Titans, I look for people who either have, and I don't limit it to this, but I find value in sometimes in people who have a sports background, an athletic background, particularly team-based sports, or those who come from a music background too, because either of those are environments where you have to sacrifice. You're part of a team. You don't always get the solo. You don't always get the shot. You have to commit to practice. You have to commit to schedule. You learn about time management. You learn about dedication, and just participating in those, even if you're quote unquote not good, over an extended period of time, demonstrates resiliency.
Right.
To be clear, I don't limit our hiring just to people who've been in music or sports, but because you can learn those things in other avenues as well. But those are things that I see in those worlds.
Yeah. And finally, what I certainly appreciated about John's talk was just that vulnerability of saying, when I was taken out of my normal situation, I was scared. And I think particularly in these days, I think there's an FDR quote that says, courage is not the absence of fear. It's the judgment that there are things more important than the fear, and you just have to persevere.
Good. Thank you very much. That's a good place. I want to invite John in. So thank you, Colleen and Darren. Actually, we still need that. Yeah, thanks. So John, let's start with. I would like you to expand on the idea that basketball players die twice. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think that the identity that we're told about, right, culturally, we're told we matter. And specific to being a professional athlete, I think, and when you think about the sort of the track of what happens through retirement, there's a lot of effort, energy that's focused on creating that that version that people adore and admire.
Mm-hmm.
When you lose that, the things that I miss the most are camaraderie, competition with my teammates. So you'll always miss that.
Yeah.
But because of that competition and camaraderie, when you move into a space that one is unfamiliar, but then in which you had no real practice, you've got to let go and really I had to find myself unlearning a lot of what I've learned. So the challenge of sort of growing within that professional space for me was certainly there. The hunger, the desire, the determination was definitely there, and the ability to sort of be that teammate was, I think, what ultimately has gotten me to a place where I recognize my strengths. I also recognize my shortfalls. So how do I hire around that and really empower our team to move in the same direction together just based upon our mission?
How about your life outside of work? I'll ask you one more question before we'll go out to the Facebook audience. Do you have children?
I do. I've got an 11-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old girl.
Wow, special girl there, right?
For sure.
Are they going to be basketball players?
You know what? I really don't stress that with specifically my 11-year-old. I think one of the things that would probably surprise people is that I don't. Similarly, my father didn't do it with me.
Yeah.
And I think that in today's society we put so much emphasis and an overemphasis on sport, and I call it it's Me Too, and parents kind of sort of rally around the fact that they want to take their kids out to traveling basketball and traveling football, traveling baseball. I really don't. All I care about is one. Can they be good leaders?
Sure.
Are they outstanding members at their work, in their community, and then just overall just good people. So it's less to do about sport. I think about finding and cultivating a passion and living life.
Okay. So, Bo, you've been monitoring some of the questions that are coming in on Facebook, and let me remind you all that we will get to most of your questions, we promise. Maybe just not during the broadcast of the breakfast, but we're going to do a podcast from these two chairs about 10 minutes after we finish the Facebook Live. So, Bo, what's a question from the audience?
Yeah, a lot of great questions coming in. As you said, not enough time to get to them all. But Sheila from TCF Bank asks, who was your most effective coach and what characteristics made them so effective? Great
question, Sheila. Thank you. I think, it was brought up that vulnerability is something that's important. I would say probably the most influential coach in my life was my college coach, Clem Haskins. And really, he was tough, he was challenging, demanding, but you knew that when you crossed the lines that he genuinely cared about you. So a characteristic was care. He looked out for you in every aspect possible and genuinely took an interest in who you were as a person. Certainly a lot of vulnerability that he displayed. And the culture that was built around their team was really the essence of family. And so in basketball, when somebody would get beat one-on-one, I'm sticking up for my family member and who ultimately is my teammate, which is I got your back. But then when I slide over, that means there's a void that's left. So who then has my back once I've got somebody else's back? And that's the reason why we were able to cultivate some success. So he's the one who sticks out most often in my head, and that's the reason we were able to get to the Final Four.
Yeah, fabulous. Another question?
Yeah, Josh on Facebook asks, how do you use your experience to relate and motivate the players on the Lynx and Timberwolves?
Yeah, it's interesting in that I used to be a former Timberwolf, and in my transition from being a Gopher, where you had all this rah-rah around us for the first time getting to the Final Four, and then over the course of 30 years, the Timberwolves have been the team that they have been and have struggled to sort of really outside of our our 2003-2004 playoff run, have really struggled to amass wins. Well, when I used to sit and on the bench or if I'm in the game, I never really understood that my relationship with the fans was the thing that was the most important. Not only my relationship with the fans, but also understanding sort of the mechanisms around corporate partnerships, community organizations, season ticket members, youth basketball.
It's an ecosystem.
It's a full ecosystem, and the business unit is ultimately supporting the basketball player. So I think the biggest lesson that I would want to teach them is that it's not just about you. Right, and we're taught, and especially nowadays with the kids starting younger, and you've got a ton of kids on social media now who have more followers than NBA players sometimes at the high school level. So it's just being careful and one, building some trust and equity with the players, but more importantly, getting them to understand that yes, at some point it will stop, and the sense of purpose is the thing you need to define most, and it really starts with an underlying value system that you can truly define to sort of create that success.
Yeah. Scott, do you have one more?
Yeah, we've got time for one more. How did playing on several teams shape your leadership style?
I love that question. It allowed me, in the course of 5 years and 7 teams and playing in 7 countries, to see the varying degrees of success and how we define success, because I believe every team, every individual, every company should have a mission, all right? And most do, I could say some do a good job of really talking and being able to sort of shape what that mission looks like and how do you measure the objectives against that mission. But there are teams, NBA, college, high school, companies, individuals that even based upon the poll that we saw, don't necessarily have that personal compass. Yeah. And I didn't have it either. I mean, I worked my tail off. I surrounded myself with the right people. I took a lot of great input and ultimately through timing, opportunity, and luck was able to gain that type of success. But as we saw in my transition over, it wasn't enough.
You didn't have a plan.
I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
Right. So now when I think about the ways in which, at least I can help our organization shape that lens, and certainly we've got great leadership across the board with Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx. I just do my part to really help shape that narrative.
Well, I always finish every interview with the same exact question. And part of what we do here at Good Leadership and at the Good Leadership Breakfast is we stand up proof statements to help encourage people to lead with goodness. So can you give us an example that proves to you that goodness pays for you as a leader?
I think, especially in today's times, I guess I'll start with myself first. I think I'm proof positive that I've had a lot of good coaches and influencers in my life that have at least helped to sort of shape and define a pathway to create success. That in turn has led to great hires on our team, specifically within our team. I've got a great group of teammates that one are passionate and caring, and happen to be one of the several beacons inside of our company. So it's proof positive that it pays. But just from an organizational perspective, Glenn Taylor recently contributed $1 million to the part-time workers of Target Center.
Yep.
Carl Anthony Towns, donated $100,000 to Mayo Clinic research around, COVID-19 testing.
Yep.
So all of those are aspects of good leadership, and people are taking a stance and look no further. I mean, there's a lot of negativity and panic, but I look at sort of the glass half full and think about the ways in which there's a lot of great leaders out there providing good examples of what good leadership is.
And I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting here shoulder to shoulder with you that goodness pays for me definitely, because there's no way that I would have you here in the Aspiration Suite as a guest for the Good Leadership Breakfast for the world premiere of doing this out on Facebook Live had I not ventured into this. So I'm really, really grateful. I want desperately to shake your hand, but I'm not going to do it,
For
okay?
sure. We could just lock eyes.
Yeah, there you go. There you go,
yeah.
pal. Someday it'll happen, I
For sure.
promise. Well, good. So we also, our friends at Bremer Bank, if Julie was here, she would come on right now and add class to the stage for sure. And she would donate $500 from her employer, Bremer Bank, to your charity. So where do you want those dollars to go?
I want those dollars to go to Literacy Matters. Literacy Matters is an organization that is looking to bridge the literacy gap, specifically with kids K through 3. They use artificial intelligence and IBM Watson, coupled with Gordon Gillingham curriculum, to utilize a one-to-one learning platform. So individual learning is done just based upon machines, and over time, you will have the individualized learning style specific for you, because kids who can't read, we've shown that by the time they reach 4th grade, are in juvenile systems, and a propensity for promiscuity, drug and alcohol use. 85% of kids who are in the juvenile system cannot read. So, in Minnesota being 50 of 50 states when it comes to just the literacy gap, Deb Mallon, love you, love the mission that,
Yeah.
that you're bringing about. Literacy Matters definitely deserves the donation.
Fantastic. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Awesome. Well, let's invite our friend Bo in now. Bo's going to tell us what charity are we giving the dollars to, and how much did we raise?
All right. Yes. Hey, thank you to everyone who's watching. You guys are so generous. We raised $1,050 through the Bucket of Goodwill, and with the match from Mark Bergman, that is $2,100 going to, again, virtual drum
roll, yes.
Meals on Wheels.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we'll keep that open all day long.
Yes,
You can
so
participate in any way you want to for the rest of the day. We just really, really appreciate that. So we have one more poll, and this will get us set up for what we're doing for next month. And that question is, for those of you who are in an enterprise, do you find the business plan for your organization to be compelling to you, both personally and professionally? Answer yes or no. I'm going to give you just a couple of seconds to do that before we close out here. Let's watch this come up. So far, one person's voted, and it's 100%. I sure hope that person works for me. Once again, you'll have many chances to answer this if you stay in touch with us. If at any point in time today you are inspired to know more about good leadership, just send us an email at info@goodleadership.com. We can provide all these materials. We can provide information about everything else that's coming after the breakfast. Next month, we'll be right back here in the Aspiration Suite. We're going to feature a wonderful woman whose name is Gloria Perez. She is in charge of the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. She's a firecracker. We're going to have a really, really, really good time with her. So I'm going to end with some coaching challenges for you. The first one, I think, is incredibly relevant for our times right now. We're all knocked off center by having to spend way more time at home than any of us wants to. The first thing we need to do is to take care of ourselves. So take care of yourself. We gave you the personal leadership benchmark. There are strategies there to help you make your life brighter and your resilience deeper. Use it. It'll help. Including in that is to set goals for yourself. Don't let yourself wander during this time. Set goals for every week and work on that 3-year planning tool so you've got goals, both personally and professionally, for 3 years out. It'll help you have a longer term perspective, and that will increase your resilience as well. And then finally, accept the challenge. How are you improving the resilience of your team? We have no idea how long our work from home mandate is going to last. We don't know what kind of effect this is going to have on our psyches. I predict that next Monday and the following Monday after that are going to be increasingly low points when we realize that after spending an entire weekend at home, now we're about to spend another entire week at home. So let's help each other improve our resiliency. I think that's incredibly important for how we come out of the recession that's going to be caused by the coronavirus. I'm going to remind you again that we'll be back here next Wednesday. We're going to produce a webinar that'll help you look into how to lead through change and loss. There is a lot of change going on and a lot of loss. My heart breaks for people in the service industry, for people in the restaurant industry. I know just personally, I have had 6 professional speeches that have been canceled. I know a lot of people's livelihood depended on those events, and they're just not going to happen. And so we're going to teach you some skills about how to lead through change and loss next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central on our Wednesday webinars. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for exploring the Good Leadership Breakfast online. We think that the highest compliment that any leader can get is when someone says, "You radiate goodness." We know that you're interested in developing yourself, otherwise you wouldn't have tuned in. So I'm hoping that you can radiate goodness today and every day, and please, carpe diem, seize the day today. We'll be back in about 10 minutes to do a live recording of the Goodness Pays Leadership podcast where I'll get a chance to ask all the questions that you asked earlier by Facebook to John Thomas. So we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you.